Farmweek is a production of the Mississippi State University Extension Service.
Today on Farm Week, we have two feature stories for you. You've heard about it being dry in the West. It's as bad as they say it is in California, practically bone dry.
We have two Southern gardening segments today. Use a little imagination and build your own unique sedum displays. You also find out that lichens are not dangerous to your trees.
In our first feature story, growing your own wild turkeys. Take some simple steps to provide the proper habitat and they will thrive.
We've got to have successful nests and we've got to have good survival of the poults. And so habitat, proper habitat for nesting areas, brood rearing areas, feeding, courtship, the whole thing has to be provided.
Good day, everyone. I'm Leighton Spann.
And I'm Artist Ford. Welcome to Farm Week. Today it's a feature story edition of our show. Late turkey hunting season usually starts in mid-March in Mississippi. Unfortunately for many, it's the only time of the year they think about wild turkeys. To prosper, however, turkeys need proper habitat year-round. They will flourish if you use common sense. This story first aired on Farm Week almost 18 years ago, but the advice it gives is still valid today. It's an early March morning in southwest Mississippi. If anyone can lay claim to the thrill of the hunt, it's turkey hunters. They're eye to eye with an animal that has keen eyesight and clear hearing. They try to talk turkey by imitating its language while covered in camouflage clothing from boots to hat. When you're out in the woods hunting turkeys, it's easy to forget why the turkeys are there, or in some cases, not there. The reason is habitat. The better your land suits the needs of turkeys, the better your chances of having them. Turkeys are creatures of forest land habitat, and over half of the southeast is forested, much of that in private land, so producing turkeys on private forest land areas is critical. Like many animals, turkeys need a varied habitat to be successful. They can live in hardwood or pine forests. With the increase in the value of timber, many landowners are cutting trees and replanting them in pine plantations. In the future, turkeys will need help from man in order to maintain their present numbers in Mississippi. The key to having a good wild turkey population is production. We've got to have successful nests and we've got to have good survival of the poults. And so habitat, proper habitat for nesting areas, brood rearing areas, feeding, courtship, the whole thing has to be provided. And we achieve that habitat with a good mix of forest land habitat and openings. Stewart says turkeys can do well on land that ranges from as little as 15% open space up to 65%. Logging roads such as this one with wide shoulders can become important areas for turkeys to raise their young. Turkeys will normally nest within 10 to 20 yards of an opening, a roadside or an edge like this. And we've got pretty decent nesting habitat here in this pine forest, although it probably does need a burn, and that will help open it up some and produce more food. So the hen will bring them from the nest out into brood rearing habitat, and they can pick up grasses, and the hen and the poults later on will use these roadsides to pick up a lot of seed heads that are going to be produced here with some of these grasses and different weeds like that. Some of the more favored foods would include hard mass like acorns in the fall and winter, green stuff in the spring and summer, seed heads late in the summer that you might find out in a grassy field. These are important foods, and surprisingly to some people, pine seed is a very good turkey food.
So in years when we lose our acorn crop or don't have an acorn crop to speak of, then pine seed can be very important, along with nearly any year. Even when we do have an acorn crop, they'll use pine seed.
Stewart says it's important to put gates on logging roads to keep out traffic and thereby encourage turkeys to use the areas. In pines, turkeys prefer older, thin stands, which have been controlled burned on a 3 to 5 year basis. The open understory provides food and cover. In pine plantations, Stewart says research shows turkeys do the best in trees 2 to 4 years old. The main goal is to control burn and provide open space.
But if we can get into pine plantations fairly early with a burning and thinning program, provide some openings, some permanent openings in with that pine plantation, we can produce good numbers of turkeys and achieve our objectives there for the wild turkey as well as white-tailed deer and other species.
Providing openings for turkeys applies to hardwood forest settings as well as pine. This Claiborne County beef cattle operation is owned by the Covington family. It's 60% hardwood timberland and 40% pasture. Since turkeys nest on the ground, it's important to avoid mowing pastures or burning too early in the spring.
If we can avoid practices such as bush hogging and disking or burning during the nesting season, say from mid-March through June or July, ideally we would cover most of the nesting season then.
At the Covington farm, they wait until the latter part of June to mow, and even then they leave some pastures unclipped.
Well, about 5 years ago on the place, we went into we really want to make it look good, so we clipped down all our pastures, and which it looked pretty, but it was pretty detrimental to our turkey population. We noticed after the first couple of years that we were seeing fewer and fewer successful hatches, and we contributed to there just wasn't enough brood area. So that's what we did. We came back in and left some areas so that the hens would have places to raise their little ones.
If we do need to bush hog or clip a field during the nesting season, if we can leave a perimeter area around that field undisturbed, then that will also help us, because most of those nests will be around the edge.
Another way the Covingtons keep up turkey numbers is not to harvest every bird they see. No year-old males, known as jakes, are taken, and the killing of older gobblers is limited.
We don't kill any jakes at all, and on our big gobblers, even in those cases, even with 720 acres, what I try to do is limit it to 3 gobblers, and in special situations, if we see we've got plenty of birds, we will go ahead and kill 4 birds off here, but 4 is the maximum we'll kill off this place in any one year.
On this particular day, Covington called this jake in close before the turkey saw the Farmweek camera and decided he should go. Is the work to produce turkey habitat worth the trouble? For some, it is.
I get more pleasure out of just going out and listening to the birds gobbling and calling to them and watching how they respond, how they react.
From Southwest Mississippi, I'm Artis Ford reporting.
Well, go to our Farm Week website if you'd like to see this story on turkey habitat. The website is farmweek.msucares.com. You can also find us on Facebook and YouTube. We'll also have links to get you started in providing habitat for wild turkeys while you're growing your trees for timber. And that is the thing, Leighton. What's good for the pine timber, it's good for the turkeys too. So, and it's hard to believe that story shot that in 1996. I can still remember that like it was yesterday. I mean, it was so much fun being out there with a camera trying to get the turkeys.
But still pertinent information today.
But still pertinent information. All we have to do is start, pick, some habitat and try to start working on it, and hopefully those turkeys will come.
Thanks, Artis. Well, time now for today's trivia quiz on Farm Week, and it is about wheat. United States farmers export half of the wheat they grow each year. Our question: when was wheat first grown in the United States? Is the answer 1492, 1665, 1777, or wheat has always been grown in North America? We'll have the answer after today's 2 Southern Gardening segments. Have you ever thought, too bad I have to throw away this old table or chair? Well, Extension horticulturist Dr. Gary Bachman shows us how combining sedums and repurposed items can add interest to your garden.
In past Southern Gardening segments, we've looked at the versatility of several species of succulents, which I lump together and call sedums. From their use as vegetation on green roofs to pretty combination containers, these are adaptable plants. Today I want to share some other really unique ways to use and display sedums. Rhonda at Rivers Greenhouse and Garden is very creative at using recycled or repurposed materials to craft whimsical garden art. We've shown old window frames used in the garden before, but here Rhonda has actually replaced the missing panes of glass with hens and chicks for beautiful living wall art. We've all seen old wooden chairs that have the seats rotted away that are destined for the trash. Here's an example of using chicken wire to hold potting mix and growing a new and colorful seat cushion of sedums. I definitely wouldn't want to sit on this. Now I really like this blue outdoor patio setting. Rhonda has taken sedums of various colors and textures and created a gorgeous tablescape. These plants are growing in a tablecloth of blonde sphagnum peat moss. This adds a fine base texture and holds enough moisture to keep the place setting looking good. And of course there are matching chairs to complement the table. This chair features a cushion of hens and chicks huddled together and is a party of textures in gray pinks, bronzy greens, and dark burgundies. These are tough plants that you can enjoy for a long time, just don't overwater them. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Gary says that sedums look good the whole growing season, and they are perennials.
In our second Southern Gardening today, lichen. A lot of people get concerned when they spot this scaly organism on the trunks and limbs of trees. Dr. Gary Bachman says, don't let it worry you.
This time of year, I get calls about this moldy stuff growing on plants and whether it will harm our trees and shrubs. The cause for concern is an organism called lichen. Lichen are very interesting and are found throughout the Southeast and beyond. A misconception many gardeners have is that lichen are parasites and feeding on the landscape plants. Actually, the lichen is only growing on the surface of the bark. They are composed of an unlikely combination of a fungus and algae that are combined in a symbiotic relationship. In other words, the algae and fungus have taken a liking to each other. There are three main types of lichen that are commonly seen in our landscape trees. Some spread on the tree, very flattened in appearance. These are the crustose forms of lichen, and like the name suggests, may look a little crusty. Other lichens develop folds that resemble a crumpled sheet as they spread across a branch. These wavy folds are produced by the follicose forms of lichen. The third commonly found form of lichen are organisms that are highly branched with multiple projections. These projections can have a very fine texture that resembles little balls of hair growing on a limb. These are the fruticose forms of lichen. Lichens are commonly observed on trees and shrubs that are struggling. For example, this live oak with the circling roots. In reality, the lichens were already present before any decline started, giving the illusion of causing the problem. Now, I personally think that lichen adds a touch of patina to our landscape plants. I'm horticulturist Gary Bachman for Southern Gardening.
Gary says if you look close, lichen actually add a touch of graceful age to your trees and shrubs.
Well, it's time now for the answer to today's trivia quiz on Farm Week. It's about when wheat was first grown in the United States. The answer may surprise you. Prairie Grains magazine says wheat was first grown as a hobby crop in the U.S. in 1777. There's evidence wild wheat was collected 23,000 years ago. The domestication of modern wheat began 12,000 years ago in southeastern Turkey in western Asia.
We're going to pause now for a break on Farm Week. Coming up, we'll have the calendar and one more feature story for you. You've probably heard in passing about the drought in California. Well, it's as bad as they say it is.
At Mississippi State University, Extension is reaching beyond the college campus and impacting adult education.
we're instructing agricultural professionals on the latest trends in research and technology, inspiring communities, empowering small businesses, and promoting the growth of healthy families where youth and adults can reach their fullest potential.
The MSU Extension Service, sharing our vision for the future.
Before we get back to our last story, let's look at the Farm Week calendar. A bed-making mulching machine demonstration field day will be Friday, March 21st. The location is the Alliance for Sustainable Ag Production Demonstration Farm. The farm is located 1 mile southwest of Highway 51 on Coleman Road. Now that's between Goodman and Durant. Confidential free one-on-one legal advice will also be available from the University of Mississippi Transaction Legal Clinic. Mississippi State University is hosting a 2-day training on large animal rescue. That's Saturday and Sunday, March 29th and 30th. The location is the MSU-ES Center on the south side of campus in Starkville. The cost is $75. Participants will learn how to safely rescue large animals involved in accidents and disasters. The course is designed for emergency responders, veterinarians, and livestock handlers. 12 hours of veterinary continuing education credits are available. The spring feeder calf board sale takes place on Tuesday evening, April 1st. The 2014 Cattlemen's Exchange Producer Sale will be at Winona High School. Gets underway at 7 p.m. The fall sale will take place in Hattiesburg on Monday, August 4th. Go to our Farm Week website at farmweek.msucares.com for information on these and other events. Now check out this week's Farm Week Snapshot.
Our last story today concerns the drought in the western United States. It's hard for us in the east to comprehend that even in normal years, rainfall is scarce in the west. California is now enduring a record drought, which is entering its third year. Farmer water allocations are being cut dramatically. Our last story was shot when there was still a chance some snow might fall and help the situation. Rain has fallen recently, but this moisture is a long way from shaking the thirst of farmers and the state's millions of residents. Market to Market's Andrew Bott reports.
When gas is $5, $6 a gallon, usually we could adjust, right? We could raise our price of hay. We could raise our price of doing tractor work. We could raise our price, we have a little construction business. We could raise that. But if it don't rain, how do you adjust that? You can't.
Frank Imhoff has spent his entire life along the hilly ranchlands of west central California. His cattle operation was passed down from his father, who took ownership from Frank's grandfather. And all throughout those 3 generations of Imhoffs, they've never seen anything like this.
It's all the way down. There ain't nothing there. There's grain that hasn't popped out yet. And there ain't enough moisture there to sustain that for very long, I wouldn't think. So is it the worst? Yeah, it's definitely the worst.
Imhoff's hundreds of acres of farmland, much of it used for hay production, are dry and fallow, following an unrelenting barrage of warm weather and bone-dry conditions.
Our daily average is 57 degrees, and we're at, what the hell are we at? 77 yesterday?
Frank's plight is emblematic of cattle ranchers throughout California, all suffering under the worst drought conditions in recorded history, as they make tough decisions on culling their herds. Imhoff's additional grazing ground, within a stone's throw of the San Francisco Bay, often requires pumps to keep the water table from seeping in, but not this year.
My wife did not come from a farming background, and she thinks this is pretty close to the end.
The Golden State is a hotbed of extremely dry conditions, with more than 95% of California in some stage of drought. 70% of the state is categorized in either extreme or exceptional drought. More than 150 miles away from Imhoff's cattle, in the Sierra Nevada foothills, the massive dam at Lake McClure shows how severe California's situation has become for the region's entire water supply. A dramatic drop in the water level here has revealed a 1920s-era dam, usually tucked below hundreds of feet of lake water.
Our economy, 1/3 of it is driven by agriculture. Given our economy and our way of life here at Merced, it's, I think to look at this lake this low is heartbreaking is probably the word for it.
Mike Jensen with Merced Irrigation District points out that Lake McClure's role as a multi-purpose water reservoir serving California's Central Valley could be tasked to a breaking point in 2014.
We are going into what appears to be the third dry year. We've had 2 consecutive dry years in 2012 and 2013. And as of now, this is one of the driest years we've got on record for Merced Irrigation District. The lake capacity itself is 1 million acre feet, and we are down to less than 22% today.
Water now slowly seeping out of Lake McClure descends towards the Central Valley via the Merced River, before massive pumping stations throughout the valley irrigate farm fields filled with everything from lettuce to almond trees. California produces 1/3 of the nation's fruits and vegetables. For growers and processors like Jeff Marchini, it's a combination of focusing on both short-term shortages and long-term solutions.
Almonds are a permanent crop, but there's going to be a lot of ground that's fallowed this year because of a lack of water, and there's only X going around. So you're going to see growers take whatever allocation they have or whatever fine amount of water and use it maybe to keep their permanent crops alive and fallow those rotational crops. So there's going to be a lot of things that are just not going to get planted.
Marchini's almond facility is still cleaning and processing 80 million pounds of fresh product annually, but his fields outside are carefully allocating precious moisture through pivot and drip irrigation. Marchini and other growers are concerned that farmers dealt with acre inches of water from the Merced Irrigation District will simply turn to their only other option, pumping from deep underground aquifers and further depleting the region's water table for generations to come.
We don't like pumping out of those aquifers unless we really have to. Why? Because it is a precious resource, and we know there's unknowns on how much exactly is out there.
Back upstream at Lake McClure, water officials know their hope of a seasonal snowpack recharge is dismal at best.
We're watching the weather as close as anybody, and it's frustrating. We still do have a couple of months of winter left, so things could change. We're not terribly optimistic at this point. We're planning for a dry year.
Lake McClure's water level is largely recharged from this famed valley, known as Yosemite National Park. But the conditions here have been so warm that hikers have soaked in 60-degree temperatures in January, as the tallest waterfall in North America is nothing more than a trickle. The promise of a snowpack recharge is almost non-existent. The nearby Hetch Hetchy Valley District serves 2.4 million Californians by pumping water from near Yosemite over the hills and west to San Francisco.
We should have a foot of grass out here right now, a foot of green grass.
But what do you have?
Nothing. 2 inches of nothing.
Ranchers like Frank Imhoff question whether the hard decisions he'll have to make on the farm will be required of nearby population centers.
This is San Francisco water ground. There's 2 reservoirs back here. There's Hetchy Hetchy. The 2 million people that live in San Francisco are going to get drinking water. They're not going to waste an ounce of time for a farmer.
He made a point of showing our market-to-market crew what runs beneath his parched rangelands, a massive water pipe destined for coastal cities.
Here again, who's going to win this battle? This water, will it ever stop? If those dams like you saw yesterday are empty and we don't get snow, will this stop? And if it does, then what do those people do?
When President Obama visited California, he promised livestock disaster support from Washington, but had a warning not just for California, but the entire American West in the 21st century.
To start building new infrastructure, to start having new plans, to calibrate the baseline that we're working off of. And everybody, from farmers to industry, to residential areas, to the north of California and the south of California and every place in between, as well as the entire western region, are going to have to start rethinking how we approach water for decades to come.
For Market to Market, I'm Andrew Bach.
You can watch this story again on our Farm Week website. That's farmweek.msucares.com. You can also watch Farm Week stories on YouTube and Facebook. We'll also have a link to the Market to Market website where you can see the story as well as read the script. You can also find us on Twitter at twitter.com/farmweek. And Leighton, in recent years, I've been spending a lot of time in North New Mexico and the Texas Panhandle. Normally, in their normal years, they get so little rain that it doesn't take much for them to slip into being a bad drought.
Right.
So now here they are in a situation where it is a bad drought. And like I said, eventually it may come to what's going to happen to the cities. There's just not going to be enough water to go around.
Sounds like it.
Well, we are at the end of Farm Week for this week. On our next show, we're finally turning the corner on winter.
Interested in planting some new varieties this year? Try some old ones instead. Seed Savers of Iowa is just one location where you find hardy heirloom plants.
In Southern Gardening, Gary Bachman says, take a closer look at your landscape and you'll find many plants are more unusual than you think. For the rest of the Farm Week crew, I'm Artist Ford.
And I'm Leighton Spann. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next week.